That Christmas was supposed to be different. For once, I wasn't scrambling at the last minute, frantically wrapping gifts the night before. By the first week of December, I had already finished my holiday shopping, carefully selecting presents for my parents, my brother Jacob, his wife Kelly, and their children. I had even purchased extra gifts, just in case of any unexpected visitors. I had a feeling this year would be special. That was why I was so blindsided when my mother opened the door, her expression tight, and said, "We don't want you here this year." I stood there on my parents' front porch, weighed down by bags of carefully wrapped gifts, convinced this was some kind of bizarre joke. A confused chuckle slipped from my lips, until I heard Jacob's voice behind her. "This is no place for losers," he said coolly. "You're really starting to wear on all of us." I just stared. My father lingered in the background, shifting uncomfortably, refusing to meet my gaze. My mother, despite the unease written all over her face, stood firm. Jacob, on the other hand, looked completely unbothered, smug, even, humiliation, anger, confusion, the emotions tangled inside me, warring for dominance. But I swallowed them down, keeping my voice even. "Fine, if that's how you feel." With a nod, I turned and walked back to my car. As I sat in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel, Jacob's words echoed in my head. "No place for losers. You're really starting to wear on all of us." Where had this come from? What had I done to deserve this? I had done nothing but give. For years, I had helped Jacob and his family, paying for his children's summer camps, school supplies, even stepping in to cover his mortgage when times were tough. And now, suddenly, I wasn't even welcome at Christmas? No, I wasn't leaving without an answer. Leaving the gifts in the car, I went back to the house. They hadn't expected me to return. My parents were still standing there, speaking in hushed tones, while Jacob lounged on the couch, scrolling through his phone as if nothing had happened. "What's going on?" I asked, stepping inside. "Why am I not welcome at Christmas? What did I do?" Jacob didn't even look up. He just smirked. "You really don't get it, do you?" he said, lazily flicking through his screen. "You've been slacking off lately. The kids have barely gotten anything from you this year." The words hit like a slap. "What are you talking about?" I said, stunned. "I spent hundreds on presents for your kids. They have more gifts in my car than anyone else here." Jacob finally met my eyes, his expression unimpressed. "Last year, you did more. This year, it's like you don't even care. It's embarrassing for us, honestly." I turned to my parents, expecting them to say something, maybe to call Jacob out for being ridiculous. Instead, my mother gave me an awkward smile and said, "But you just bought a new car. You found money for that." For a moment, I was speechless. "The car is on credit," I said, my voice carefully controlled. "And even if it wasn't, how does buying a car suddenly make me responsible for Jacob's kids? They are not my responsibility." Jacob leaned back, arms stretched over the couch like a king on his throne. "You're the one who makes the most money," he said, as if that explained everything. "We're family. Families help each other. You've always done that." My gaze flicked to Kelly. She was quiet in the corner, her hands folded tightly in her lap, eyes cast downward. She looked like she wanted to disappear. "So that's your reasoning?" I asked, my voice low. "Because I've been generous in the past, I'm obligated to do it forever, and if I don't, I'm a loser." Jacob shrugged. "If the shoe fits." That was it. I exhaled sharply and shook my head. "You know what?" I turned to my parents. "You're right. I don't belong here." Then, to Jacob, I said, "Enjoy your Christmas, and good luck with those presents, because this loser is done financing your life." I didn't wait for a response. I walked out. The drive home was silent, my hand gripping the wheel harder than necessary. My mind reeled, trying to process what had just happened. Had I really been exiled from my own family's Christmas? Had I truly done something so wrong? When I pulled into my driveway, I didn't get out right away. I just sat there, staring at the gift bags in the passenger seat. Gifts I had spent weeks picking out, thinking about what would bring my parents joy, what would make the kids smile. And for what? The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about Christmas. This wasn't just about presents. This had been building for years. Jacob had always relied on me. He and Kelly had struggled financially from the beginning. He couldn't hold down a stable job, and her part-time income barely covered their expenses. At first, I had helped because I wanted to. A few $100s here, a little extra support there. It was supposed to be temporary, but a little while became years. Jacob's calls always came when he needed something, never just a check-in, never just a talk. And the worst part? I had always said yes. Not because I had to, but because I cared about his kids. I didn't want them to suffer because their father couldn't manage his finances. But somewhere along the way, help had turned into expectation. Gratitude had been replaced by entitlement. And now, the final insult, I wasn't even welcome at Christmas because I hadn't given enough. I made my decision that night. No more. No more funding Jacob's life. No more bending over backward to compensate for his irresponsibility. He would have to figure it out on his own. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Cutting off financial support meant risking what little relationship I had left with him, with his children, maybe even with my parents. But I couldn't keep doing this. I wouldn't be treated like an ATM instead of brother. Days passed. No one called me. I didn't call them. Maybe they got the message. I should have known better. Jacob wouldn't take it lightly. New Year's Eve passed in complete silence. No texts, no phone calls, nothing. My parents, Jacob, even Kelly, they all ignored me. For the first time in years, I spent the holidays alone. I hadn't expected them to reach out, but as midnight came and went, the choir felt heavier than I anticipated. I thought about calling, but every time my finger hovered over the dial, I remembered Jacob's sneer, his cruel words, no place for losers. I had held things together for years. I had given, supported, and sacrificed, and yet they treated me as though I were disposable. If distance was what they wanted, I would give it to them. By mid-January, something shifted. Kelly had always been quiet, someone who avoided confrontation at all costs. But one evening, she broke the silence with a simple text. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I don't agree with what happened. Jacob won't hear from me, but I thought you should know. I stared at my phone, unsure of how to respond. On one hand, it was a relief to know someone in my family recognized the truth. On the other, her words felt like too little, too late. She had been there that night. She had stayed silent. After a moment, I typed back, I appreciate it, Kelly, but this isn't something I can just move on from. She didn't push the conversation further, and I was grateful for that. Then came the visit. It was early February. I was in the middle of a work meeting when a knock echoed through my apartment. I ignored it at first. I wasn't expecting anyone. But the knocking persisted. When I finally opened the door, Jacob stood there, looking more tense and agitated than I had ever seen him. Before I could say a word, he pushed past me into the apartment. We need to talk. I folded my arms. About what? His expression was tight, his voice clipped. You need to stop acting like this and start helping out again. I laughed, an incredulous, bitter sound. Helping out? You mean paying for your life? I told you, I'm done with that. Jacob scowled. You're the one with the money. Do you have any idea how hard it's been for us since you decided to act like this? The kids barely have what they need. Kelly's trying to hold everything together, but we can't do it without your help. I stared at him in disbelief. Are you listening to yourself right now? I said slowly, You're a grown man, Jacob. You have a wife and children. If you need more money, go out and earn it. It's not my job to fix your problems. His jaw tightened. You've always helped before. Why are you being so selfish now? Selfish. I repeated, feeling the anger rise in my chest. Let's talk about selfish. Jacob, you lied to our parents about me. You turned them against me. You banned me from Christmas because I didn't spend enough on your kids. And now you're here, demanding more? You've got some nerve. He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand, cutting him off. We're done here, I said firmly. I'm not giving you another dime, and I don't want to hear from you again until you learn how to act like an adult. He stood there for a long moment, glaring, before turning on his heel and storming out. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, an unfamiliar number flashed across my phone. Normally, I wouldn't have answered, but something told me to pick up. Hello. A man's voice came through the line. Is this Michael? Yeah. Who's this? This is Mark Dawson. I'm a lawyer. I represent a client who has recently expressed concern about certain financial matters involving your family. Do you have a moment to discuss them? A lawyer. A cold dread settled in my stomach. What financial matters? His tone was careful, almost too polite. I can't go into detail over the phone, but it involves financial contributions you've made to your brother Jacob and his family, specifically the use of those contributions. Would you be willing to come to my office for a discussion? 100 possibilities raced through my mind, none of them good. Had Jacob borrowed money under my name? Stolen my identity? Or was this just another manipulative ploy to squeeze more cash out of me? Who's your client? I asked. A pause. Then, I'm afraid I can't disclose that right now, but I assure you this is not a lawsuit against you. It's more of an investigation. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet. When I arrived at Dawson's office the next day, I had no idea what to expect. But the moment I sat down, he slid a folder across the desk and spoke words that left me reeling. Kelly is my client. I blinked. Kelly? Why would she need a lawyer? Dawson folded his hands. She believes Jacob has been misusing the money you've given him over the years. She suspects has been funneling it into a separate account, one she didn't know existed, rather than using it for their family. I felt sick. What do you mean, hiding money? He opened the folder, revealing copies of bank statements, receipts, even screenshots of text messages. Based on what she found, it looks like Jacob has been using the money for gambling, expensive dinners, even hotel stays. I flipped through the papers, my stomach twisting with each transaction. Large withdrawals, transfers to an unknown account in his name, transactions at casinos. 4 years, I had believed I was helping him support his family. In reality, I had been funding his personal vices. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to ask, does Kelly want me to do something? Press charges. Dawson shook his head. Not at this point. She's more focused on protecting herself and the children. But she thought you should know, in case Jacob tries to manipulate you again. I laughed bitterly. Oh, he already tried. Dawson nodded. That tracks. With your financial support cut off, he's likely in worse trouble than even Kelly realizes. I left the office that day with a strange mix of emotions. Anger, betrayal, sadness for Kelly and the kids. But beneath it all, an overwhelming sense of relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying Jacob's burdens. And I never would again.